Hello.
Hi.
I don't know if I should look there. This is Do You Like Prince Movies?
Do you like Prince movies?
I am Alex. I should probably not point there.
Don't.
That's
I mean,
probably.
what if there are three cameras? They can probably edit to the camera they'd like you to be looking at.
I would like to say welcome to Do You Like Prince Movies? I am Alex Papademus.
I'm not pointing. I'm Wesley Morris. And I'm going to look at this camera that's right behind you. You've got a very nimble. We don't have a lot of time.
We don't have a lot of time.
We're wasting time.
Tangents already. This
is like a concentrated Thanksgiving episode of Do You Like Prince Movies?
Yeah.
Because
I'm going away. Lots
we
of
have no
stuff.
time.
Yep.
And we're going to try to get through a bunch of movies.
We're going to do 37 films in 13 minutes.
Yes. And Mike Nichols died today.
It's true. And we're gonna pause somehow. We're gonna bring it down at the end.
Yes.
We're gonna lower the night canopy, as they say on Tralfamadore, and Mike Nichols, and have a somber moment.
So let's go.
We went to the movies. We saw a film.
Yes.
On Tuesday. It is the third part of the 4-part Hunger Games trilogy.
The total ripoff third part of the 4-part Hunger Games. I mean, I just don't know why they don't make. We discussed this. We know why there aren't 3 parts. We know there's a 4th part because there's like $500 million to be made from a 4th installment.
Yes, because the idea is you cut it in half, it grows into 2 movies somehow, but it really kind of doesn't. Like, there's a lot that I like about this movie.
Yes,
I think it's I think it's the rare case of the sequel where people are like, it's like the Empire Strikes Back of this franchise, and it actually feels that way to me.
See, funny, I felt that way about Catching Fire.
Yeah, well, it's the second one. It should be that, but no, right. This one, I don't. They're underground. The ground is shaking. They're under assault. They're routed, and they kind of don't do anything. And it's like I felt like I wrote this, but it feels like if the Hoth part of Empire Strikes Back was like 90 minutes. And they were just kind of hanging out there, and Luke was like, I don't even know. What is this rebellion even about? You know, what's happening? I don't even know. Why is it, there's a lot of stuff about, Katniss kind of figuring out where she is politically.
Yes.
As all young people have to do.
They push her into it a little bit, but she figures it out for herself.
She's being manipulated.
Yes.
Because they need her as a symbolic figure, so she's being manipulated
to lead the revolution to the Capitol to take out Donald Sutherland and his beard.
Yes. Or just to inspire people to do this. These poor people in the various districts. She needs to throw their bodies.
Yes.
Like every time there's an uprising, the one thing that you always see in this movie is that there is a first wave of people who just get mowed down.
They don't have any shields. Doesn't President Julianne Moore, who's the leader of District 13, where all the revolutionaries hang out?
Yeah.
Isn't there a Secretary of War who can be like, we shouldn't be sending these people out there with no shields?
No, because they're surrounded by the THX 1138 guys with the masks, and they can't go to their job at the coal mine carrying a shield.
Don't they have like a retractable shield they can use? I mean, that's a good point, by the way. I had not considered the fact that they're going straight from work to death.
Yeah, they're walking off the job site, and
they're on strike. Yeah, everybody's on strike because each district at this point, what's left of them is serving some sort of capital-oriented need.
But they're all just feeding the Capitol's hunger for...
Yeah, capital with an O, capital with an A. Who can say?
Oh, yeah. Well, he quotes Karl Marx in there, too, right? Like
yeah. I mean, I like these movies because they are smarter than they have to be. And how smart they are refuses to allow you to forget all of the current events oriented things that the movie is touching upon. Well, even if things weren't really screwed up in the world right now, they were screwed up 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 50 years ago. And so it's drawing on all this sort of conflict and strife iconography that is really, really smart and compelling, and yet never forced because this stuff never goes out of style.
Yeah, unfortunately, I guess.
Yes.
But, I mean, I feel like the teen romance feels a little more vestigial in this one. It feels less.
Peter's been taken and turned into like, I don't even know, Gerard Way. Like that's his punishment for being left behind.
We're gradually breeding you to be part of our chemical romance. We're making it happen. Yeah, he gets hollowed out kind of. It's creepy. And I mean, those moments are funny though, because he has to go, his punishment for disobeying, I guess, is sort of his brain retraining, is he has to go kind of on Dateline with Stanley Tucci.
Right.
which is, a fate worse than death. But he's participating in, this infotainment, which is great because it's like they have an entirely TMZ-based economy. It's just like TMZ and TMZ.
Yeah, information, like this sort of video information both ways is how they communicate with each other.
Yeah.
Like this is how the revolutionaries and the people of Penn Am make their point to the Capitol. This is how the Capitol then brainwashes the people in the districts.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
She makes her little viral videos, like they talk about these things. Yeah. So it's a lot of. Unfortunately, it ends up being a little too much. I think of Jennifer Lawrence kind of looking at a screen and kind of being like, oh, I can't believe what's happening.
But she's good at that.
She's great,
as it turns out.
But like dramatically, story wise, it's just there's a lot of like things happening off on like things over in District 7 and then like, oh, District 4 is rising up and like that stuff is cool, but like you just want it to be part of like some big epic that ends with the thing that I know that I read these books and I know what it actually ends with. And I feel like why can't, if Christopher Nolan can make 9-hour movies about time dilation, like you could just make it like kids are going to go, they're going to go.
What did we talk about before? What did we talk about when we were sitting around rationalizing all the reasons you and I and millions of other people could stay seated for 4 hours if we needed to? It's the Harry Potter problem. I would have sat through 10 hours of the Deathly Hallows.
Yeah, but there's no more Hunger Games, and so they can't. There's a finite resource until they start.
You got to get that last dollar.
Yeah.
You can't leave the money on the table.
I'd leave the money on the table. That's why.
This is why we're sitting in this studio instead of running the company that owns the studio.
That's why I'm going back to my District 13 bunker.
You're Alex Papademos and I'm Wesley Morris. We're not Bob Iger.
That's right. And if we exactly.
Bob Iger would be like,
yeah.
No way.
Commercially.
We're splitting this sucker into 2 parts.
Honestly, I think like Plutarch Heavensby would also be like, we're splitting this into 2 parts. Like, I think he would know. He knows about expediency. Yes. He's like, we need this too.
He's a gamesmith.
Yeah, exactly.
He knows
and
the game.
A publicist.
And a publicist.
And a master media manipulator. R.I.P. Phil Hoffman. Yeah. It's nice to see him each time you feel like, oh, there's a little less of this. This is one of the last, so it's a bummer to watch.
Thank God he's also better here than he was in the previous movie.
Yeah.
Where he just seemed completely confused by having to play a confusing person.
Someone, I forget, I'm not going to credit them, but it was the greatest joke about it. Someone was like, the only question that he asked the producers was, can I wear what I have on?
I want to guess who that person is, but we'll guess later.
Time. All right. Let's move.
Nightcrawler.
I got to cast my mind back. Nightcrawler was amazing. Nightcrawler entirely, lots of shots of Jake Gyllenhaal turning his car around on kind of not my street because it's Sunset Boulevard, but like in front of I'm like, oh, that's the old Circuit City on Sunset Boulevard. So first of all, right there, it's in LA. You don't see a lot in movies.
You don't see this version of LA.
It looks really amazing. Robert Elswit does amazing things with the night photography.
The night, yes. No, I mean, I think that for me, there are 2 things I love about this movie. One is how it looks, and the other is Riz Ahmed, who plays Jake Gyllenhaal's sidekick. So Lou Bloom, is sort of drifter. It's like he just came down from the hills or from outer space.
He's a malcontent,
right,
of some kind. He's harvesting copper wire for a living, which is not always a booming industry.
But he was doing it because it got him paid, not because it was necessarily an occupation, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're doing that because you have to.
Right.
Do it.
And so he decides he's going to come down and he happens onto a crime scene one night and sees Bill Paxton's film crew company, freelance photographers just sort of freelance journalists basically, filming these bodies.
Yeah, they're like ambulance chasers kind of, but they get there. They're like the first responders. Yes. Before the first responders. They get there to film these sort of gory action.
Police scanners, and they serve as freelance stringers for the local news. So he gets into that business and manages, because he is this weird sort of savant-like person, coming up with a sales pitch that Rene Russo's news director can't refuse. So he trains himself to become one of these stringers and gets really good at it, and he discovers that he doesn't really have to pay attention to the ethics of what you and I know it to be right and wrong when it comes to going to a crime scene or a crash scene, including letting the murderers go free because it'll produce a really good payday at some point.
Right, and moving. He moves a body at one point. There's a great moment when he moves.
Yeah, that's a really good moment.
When he sort of looks up and it's like an auteur moment when he's like, "Oh man, I see it now," because he starts talking about framing a lot and things.
Yes,
like that,
I mean he's treating this like art.
Yeah, and you start to see that he's a sociopath. It's handled in a way that's really like there's only one moment that's like a real kind of like movie freak out, and it's like 10 seconds.
Yeah, I feel like. Yeah, but that's him in his apartment. I don't know why that's in there. It has nothing to do with anything. It's the cheapest part of the movie. It's the cheapest moment in the movie. I don't love this movie that much. I wish it were smarter. I wish it were actually on to something. And as a horror movie that is also a farce, I feel like it doesn't go far enough, even though it goes pretty far. I think it's content to sort of check off certain entertainment boxes as opposed to certain ideas boxes. And I felt like as a critique of capitalism, it could have been much stronger because that was really its strong suit because all the media stuff is kind of tired.
Right. That's the thing. It's not at this point. You're not going to walk out of there being like, "Oh man, I can't believe what I've just learned about local news. It's totally going to change the way I look at local news."
It's even harder on local news than local news actually is.
Yeah.
You couldn't find any censored image that this movie has on local news.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I feel like your local news is not even dedicated to.
They're not leading with any story.
No, exactly. No, but the idea exactly. It's like, what about the traffic department? It's like that's literally coming from here. I think it's based on like it's slightly an exaggeration of what that is. It's but yeah, I mean, it's like we've all seen Network. Or if we haven't,
you should.
We all should see Network.
You're pointing.
When I point, also don't cut to that camera. Just let me be pointing at the camera. That's what I want to do. I want to expose the falsehood.
Yes.
Of this whole thing. Yeah, I think it's great. I also think Renee Russo is really great. I think she's the voice of the network in those meetings, and I think she's actually kind of amazing.
She could have gone in another direction.
Yeah.
She could have gone for like gargoyle vampire, like Faye Dunaway evil.
Right, that's the template for that character.
But you get the sense that she's just a lady doing her job and she's under pressure to do it well and to have like quantifiable proof that it is being done in ratings. And she and Jake Gyllenhaal have a couple of good scenes together in which he seduces her, and she's sort of surprised by how seductive he is. And then that goes to another really interesting place. But I like Riz Ahmed, who becomes Lou's sidekick, basically. He hires this kid to go around with him and like read the police scanner, give him directions, and hold the camera. And his sense of scrupulousness is as bound up in the profit motive as Lou's, but he also is a normal person.
Who's somehow
not necessarily insane.
Yeah, who's just like answered an ad and doesn't even really know like what he's getting into at all. Like it's not like he's one of these guys. He just finds his way into this world by mistake and he's taken on as an intern, right? He's unpaid. He's an intern at the company that is Lou Bloom.
Do you think this kid's a junkie?
Well, there's that moment, right, where he talks about tricking. There's that where like Gyllenhaal talks to him about like sort of like just like susses him out. I believe that to be sort of like, game recognized game or something like that. Like he saw that, like obviously Lou has that in his background, and so Riz Ahmed's character is sort of like I feel he doesn't admit to it necessarily, but he doesn't answer in a way that would be
no,
and it's not an emphatic no.
Right.
So they both have some kind of street life in their past to a degree, and so they're more similar than than different. But yeah, I think there's something about it, but he has no idea what he's getting into. He's clearly like whatever he's done, it's not anything like what they end up being involved in.
I really like him in this movie. He's got a real purity and a real natural way of being on camera that I like. All his line deliveries are really interesting, and he's got the goodness that comes through him is I mean, it's actorly, but it also is performed with a kind of naturalism that, I mean, it reminded me of John Cazale. Like that was the person that I thought of watching him.
It's interesting. I didn't even think of that, but you're totally right.
Because that's a person who has a similar approach to acting, and it's always, I mean, he played like sort of deeply moral people who also wanted to be good in bad circumstances. I don't know. I mean, I just that this person really got to me in a way that nothing else in the movie really did. And I felt like I was watching a director, who in this case is Dan Gilroy, the screenwriter, making his first movie. He's reaching and grasping for something, and I'm not really sure he gets all the way there. But I think the last 5 minutes, when a number of things converge on the plot, and you have this really great punchline as a coda, I kind of wanted to see the movie that doesn't explain how Lou Bloom became Lou Bloom. I would just like to see the movie where Lou Bloom turns into what Bill Paxton's character already is.
Right. Well, I guess maybe you don't know that's going to happen. Like
well, no, you don't know that.
It leaves off exactly where it should, because this can't be sustainable for very long. Like, there will be another one of these situations.
Yeah, probably. But I like to see the movie about that.
I guess. But I kind of like that he just sort of Kaiser Sozes back into the world, you know? Like, he just does that little walk, and then that's it. Like, it's, you know, spoilers. Nightcrawler, sorry.
I don't think it's been out for a month. It's fine.
And that's a spoiler. Can we switch actually gears, since we were talking about the person being the one good human being in the sort of kind of creepy, scummy world of a movie? There's another one this week that we were going to talk about. There's another really good example of that.
Yes.
Which is my dude, Mark Ruffalo.
Oh, your favorite performance
in Foxcatcher? My favorite performance in Foxcatcher, in a movie that where he will be very much overshadowed by two other actors just really going for it in different ways.
So Foxcatcher is the story of John DuPont and the Schultz brothers, Dave and Mark, and how John DuPont basically invites them to come to his world and build a wrestling outfit for the '84 Olympics. And the brothers agree, or for the '88 Olympics, sorry. And the brothers agree. They go out to help him. Well, the one brother does.
Yeah, first it's Mark. Mark is
out
first, and then Dave comes later on. Dave has to be Dave has to be enticed, and Dave sort of holds out.
He's got to know it's his own operation where they already are, which I believe is Michigan.
Yeah, and it's not even that he's I'm doing that. I'm going real big in Michigan. It's just he's like, I took this job, and my wife likes it here, and we're gonna make a go of it here in Michigan.
And what are we going to Pennsylvania to even do?
Yeah, and so he's just being a good guy. Right. By not up and leaving to go work for the billionaire.
So the DuPont empire, basically the chemical empire, it's those DuPonts. And John DuPont is a strange gentleman. He has a large nose and a very sort of phlegmatic sense of assurance about himself. He sort of carries himself like this, and he's kind of like Nosferatu. He
looks like I believe it's Deep Space Nine, the one with Rene Auberjonois.
Oh wow!
You know that character? He looks like Odo.
Yeah, he does
he's got
a little
that
bit.
Weird look, like he's like, this is the base of something that can shapeshift. This is what it looks like when it's not doing that.
It's like he was mid-shift and got stuck.
Yeah, or this is just kind of the plain version when you if you don't do anything to it biologically. It's a very weird. I spent a lot of time kind of staring at that face, obviously, because the movie
it's mesmerizing.
Invites you to.
In its way, it's totally mesmerizing.
It's also bird-like. There's a lot of bird metaphors around him. You know, a lot of eagles.
No, I mean there's sort of Hitchcockiness to this guy. Like physically, he is like Alfred Hitchcock in some ways.
When he enters a room.
Right. Except his carriage is less. So the gist is there's this belief that John DuPont has that America has gotten away from itself, and he's a patriot and wants to restore patriotism through wrestling. You know, it's a convoluted worldview from a person who rarely leaves his mansion, his estate. But it speaks to Mark Schultz because, Mark Schultz is also somebody who claims to believe in hard work in America, and he has a gold medal from the '84 Olympics and believes in the hard work he had to do to get the medal. This movie Bennett Miller directed it. It's got a really stripped down style. The thing that drives me crazy about it is it's ultimately a crime story about something that happens that is law breaking, but it's building to this incident, this confrontation. And there's a lot of questions that you have to ask about who is what and why they're doing what they do. It's really stripped down, and the movie doesn't like purport to have any answers for anything, and so you, while you're watching it, are left to connect your own dots.
Yeah, I mean, it actually removes the story. The real story is more dramatic and more cinematic. It's like he was.
Yes.
You know, they shorten the amount of time that he's on the run after this thing happens. The DuPont is on the run. Apparently, there was a there was a manhunt for him on his own estate. It went on for a couple of days, and here it happens very quickly in the movie. He's avoiding the thing that you would do in the TV movie.
This would be Bennett Miller.
This would be Bennett Miller,
the director of Moneyball and Capote. Co-written by Dan Futterman, with another writer whose name escapes me. Shame on me. But there's a scene in this movie in which all hell breaks loose for the Channing Tatum character. And to bring him closer back to the surface, he has to be on an exercise bike. And I don't know if I probably mentioned this to you before. I don't know. But like, I feel like all the pedaling that he's doing to like take that weight off, I feel like that's also Bennett Miller. And he's trying to get this movie down to like the minimum fighting weight that he can allow to get back into competition.
Right. Like, how much can you strip away? How much exposition, backstory of things, like motivations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find that kind of cowardly, I have to say.
That it's not investigating why.
It's not taking any of the risks as a work of storytelling that I think a crime story should. And you can't then do that and also purport perhaps to be a movie about characters. Because you've also stripped them down to nothing too. And so what you're really left with is 3 different very good performances in search, I think, of a plot. There's enough atmosphere for the move. There's enough dread, funereal atmosphere for that to be a character in and of itself. But I don't know. I feel like I would have liked a movie that took the risk to be a little bit more sensationalistic as opposed to trying to be a work of journalism that ultimately had no personality.
Right. So you want kind of like to die for a little bit. Something in that.
I don't know that I need the farce, although that would have been a direction to go in.
Yeah, it's weird because you have Carell there, and you have Carell using all of it's all the mechanics of a comedic performance, but it's not comedic. Although there are things that are funny, like there are moments that you laugh at, like when he sort of tells you that when he says that he wants to be known, his nickname, when he assigns himself. Anybody self-administering a nickname is just really funny.
Yes, you could call me.
My friends call me Golden Eagle. I think it's Golden Eagle or Eagle or John.
Right. And I think that there are moments like that sort of point to something else. But I also think there are these other moments where both times I've watched this movie, I was struck by the thing that is unanswered but implied, which is that there's something sexual in nature that goes on between DuPont and Mark Schultz.
You mean over and above that DuPont is probably in some messed up way attracted to him?
Yes.
Like there's an actual act?
Well, I don't think that. Well, I mean, this is the thing. It sounds like you take the relationship as it's been given to you.
I guess.
I reject it.
You reject the idea that DuPont's in love with Mark Schultz?
No, I accept I wish the movie had been braver to make its own assertions instead of leaving me to speculate about what might have gone on between them. Because I think that's kind of unfair in a work based on this particular kind of true story.
Right. Like,
you know what I mean?
You don't know. Because that's the most important thing.
Because a lot of this information is out there. It's not like these aren't questions that don't have answers or the answers couldn't be gleaned. I mean, that's what journalism is about, like getting to the answer of things that you'd like to ask. But this movie is more interested in asking these questions and raising these possibilities than it is in explaining or unpacking them. So it gives you this one great scene of John DuPont waking up Mark Schultz to go practice in the middle of the night, and the practice basically amounts to DuPont like writhing on top of Mark Schultz with this look of nausea that passes over Mark Schultz's face.
Yeah, so it's a humiliation, if not a sexual assault.
Right. And yet at the same time, the movie takes this turn, and I won't go into it, but I mean, it's clear that there's a spell that Mark Schultz falls under. And it's sort of, the movie momentarily meets up in a really interesting way with that Liberace movie that Steven Soderbergh made.
It's the blonde hair. It's like where that happens for me. It's like it's that look. They both have that same look of like, you know, when he kind of is gaining weight and he's getting blonde and Liberace. Like he's got like when Damon's kind of like just loping around the mansion.
Right.
Yeah.
And the movie takes this really momentary turn into like a real psychosexual, but not really psychosexual. It's just kind of psychological odyssey, because the movie doesn't want to push any of those buttons. It doesn't really want to do anything. I mean, it wants to present this situation, hope that we glean from it that this is a story about America and about class and about how the rich exploit the not rich. These are all things that I think most audiences who experience this movie will be intelligent enough to glean, but after they've gleaned it, then what? You know, I don't feel like this movie is sort of telling us anything we couldn't have figured out or didn't already know going in, except it is a tragic story in some ways, in a lot of ways. I don't know. I don't know. I wish there were more to it than there is.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's you do come away from it. What's the is it "This Land Is Your Land" dropped at the end? There's a very, I believe that's what it is.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, there's
like, is it performed by somebody? Because I don't remember that.
I think I thought it was Dylan, but I don't know if it's, you know, I forget now. I'd have to.
You mean during the closing credits?
During the closing credits, there's a
Oh yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like, did you say Dylan?
I thought it was.
Yeah, there's a Dylan song. It might be This Year, This Land Is Your Land. There's a Dylan song. Yes.
Or I forget if it was Dylan or if it's, you know, if it's Woody Guthrie or whatever it is. But there is a moment of, you know, kind of rather heavy-handed irony at the end where you're like, oh, we need to just sew this up. So it's, you know, here's Channing Tatum going into the octagon in his sad post-wrestling career as just a piece of meat going to fight. Although I guess, you know, he just wrote a book. He's doing okay. That guy, that real guy.
Mark Schultz? Yeah.
Mark Schultz. So he'll tell this story.
Did this work for you?
You know, it did as I was watching it, and then as I've thought about it, the only thing I remember, I'm like, that's 3 performances in an appealing structure.
Yes.
You know? In a watchable, it's a very watchable movie, and it does, you're right, like that sense of dread, he's really good at building that. You know, but I'm not a huge Bennett Miller fan, actually. I've thought as I've thought about it. There's moments in all of them for me, and there's things and there's performances in all of them, but it's there is overall I'm not sure what I got about anything. And I think actually I did want it to be a little more farcical. I wanted it to go in that direction. I think there would have been more of a sense of risk to it. And when that happens, when you see DuPont's kind of self-mythology that he's creating and all that stuff, like that stuff's really funny. And I feel like I actually could have used a little more of that. I feel like if you're going to, you know, if you're not going to really sort of get in there and explore like the psychology of these people, like, you know, just kind of like give us the monster and give us the, you know, the creepiness. I don't know. I
thought about Hal Ashby's being there while I watched this.
Yeah.
I also thought about that during Nightcrawler too, which is interesting. There's a kind of stripped down quality of this movie really allows you to displace onto it whatever you want. And I don't know. I thought about the way in which you have this remote character in a world that he doesn't necessarily recognize.
But that everyone projects things onto him, like
yes.
He's Chauncey, and like Lou is very much Chauncey in that when they're like, oh, we could all learn something from Lou,
right?
You know, because
yes.
And no, you shouldn't learn anything from Lou, but they're all, it's the same as you know, it's what they took, you know, it's what they, you know, like Tom Hanks in Big, it's what they took from being there, is that he goes into the meeting and he's like, you know, I think this sucks, and they're like,
yeah,
I see, like,
right.
you know, his
the savant as
the 13-year-old
Right.
wisdom. And the reason that Lou seems appealing to them is that they're in a sort of venal business, and like he's a total creep with no scruples, and they're like, yeah, this guy's got it. He's figured it out.
No, he knows. And, he's literally, as you said, he's presented as, being somebody we can all learn something from in this world. And I think, that's a level of farce that I think I like that. But in Nightcrawler's case, I don't think it really earns it. And in this case, I wish that the movie had risked it. I wish the movie had taken the chance to maybe to paint a larger picture of these somewhat generic but auspicious, artistically auspicious ideas about America and exploitation, class exploitation, and the idea that rich people can just do whatever they want. But I don't think it's a banal idea. I think that it just sort of, it's not really explored to the fullness of it.
Yeah, just putting it in there is not enough.
Right.
It's like you get the idea that he's also in the whole arms aspect and the whole the war profiteer aspect, but that's just kind of a thing that sort of sits there.
Right.
In the movie, like there's a kind of orientation film that you see and you learn about the DuPont Corporation's various dealings.
But all the moments in the movie for me that really work are Mark Ruffalo's. Like there's that really just devastating scene where he has to say something nice about John DuPont, and you're just like, it's funny. It's funny because it's played as comedy, but the thing he's being asked to do is very uncomfortable because it's a kind of violation of a person's principle.
And of his niceness. It's
taking
advantage of
goodness.
his inherent niceness because he doesn't want to not say anything. He can't, obviously, but he also doesn't want to. He feels really bad about it because there's literally nothing nice that he can think of to say. He has a lot of moments that are just so, just quiet and wonderful. I really just like that he's he's always got like pickup kids.
Yeah.
In the scenes, and he's kind of, he's sort of like, he and Channing are both kind of playing. They're not, sort of like rocket scientists necessarily. They're athletes who are kind of like in the post-athlete career and everything. But like, there's a real sort of just inherent goodness and sweetness to that character, and it's, I don't know, it's terrific. I hope something goes down for him positively. But
you mean when people are giving out things?
When people are giving out things,
we'll see.
I hope that
We've already,
to the extent that I care, this is now my dog in the fight. This is now the thing that I care about.
Well,
the season of giving out of things.
Can I remind you?
Normally have nothing.
J.K. Simmons is going to walk off with everything.
I guess that's a supporting actor.
I mean, it's early. We'll be having this conversation at least 5 more times between now and February 22nd. But I feel like that guy's kind of got it locked up. Anything can happen, but when you've got a guy yelling at you for an hour and 40 minutes versus the like extreme needlework that Mark Ruffalo's doing, I think the guy who's doing the yelling is probably going to win.
I guess I'm more of an extreme needlework kind of guy.
Me too.
That's what we've learned.
So what else do we have? Mike Nichols died.
That was
I hate getting news like that.
It was you. You were, by the way.
Me?
You were the one who...
I'm the person who let the cat out of the bag?
I will always remember the people that killed celebrities for me. My friend Dave Katz killed Adam Yauch for me. And you killed Mike Nichols in my world. I didn't know, and then I did. I got a text message. And it's always, unfortunately, because I've written a lot of obituaries for Grantland, it's always in the form of, I don't know what your Mike Nichols duties are going to be this time. But actually, you drew this one, which I'm happy about because I want to read this. Because and you told me before the show started that like this has been difficult for you though because he is actually one of your favorite directors, which I did not know.
He is. I am guilty of not being cool.
I don't know.
I mean, look, nobody talks about Mike Nichols as being a great American director.
No, because it's not that muscular film directing. It's not like Scorsese where there's like all kinds of like work going on the screen. You can see all the action and all the things that he's kind of thinking about, and there's it's a very different kind of filmmaking. It comes from the stage. A lot of it, like those early ones, are very much.
He comes from the stage. started his first two movies. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things with Mike Nichols, right? I mean, there's the fact that he introduced himself to America as part of like a really good comedy duo.
Yeah, those guys are amazing to me. People who
Elaine May and Mike Nichols.
Yeah, he would be if he had only done the thing that he started out doing, he would probably still be in the pantheon, at least of American comedy, just for having been with Elaine May, the great Elaine May, who went on to be the great screenwriter Elaine May, but was at the time the great improviser and performer Elaine May. They could have, if they had not broken up, they'd continue to do that, like pantheon level already, without directing any films.
Right.
They break up in like 1961 due to either like personal differences or just kind of looking at each other at one point. And this is the sort of the version of the story that I like, which is that they just looked at each other and decided not to do it, because that strikes me as very Elaine May somehow.
Yeah.
But like prior to that, like really, you know, I wrote about Elaine May recently because when we did a thing about Wolf.
Yeah, we revisited Mike Nichols' Wolf.
Yeah,
in 1994.
We did a sort of Wolf around on Grantland, which was. I still can't really explain why that happened, but I went back
because it was a movie that came out in 1994 that I think a lot of people had fond feelings for.
It's a really interesting bad movie.
Yes.
A lot of people really like it though. I've seen some people coming out. Today's tributes have included some thoughts about Wolf, but anyway, like Nichols and May, it's hard to think that there was ever a time when kind of smart people's neurosis was not part of just the bedrock of comedy in America, but there was that time, and they put a lot of that in there. And it's just weird to think about it because like we were all sort of like, you know, like listening to Richard Lewis when we were in diapers, but like that was, you know, in like that was not the thing necessarily back then. And like then they sort of created this thing, and they're talking about, you know, guys with weird relationships with their mothers and doctors and all of that stuff, and they're incredible, and they have this incredible chemistry between them, and like those things are amazing. There's a really good American Masters documentary
I did not know anything about this aspect of Mike Nichols until I saw that.
Yeah, and the whole thing is on YouTube. It's really good. It's, at least for now, it is. It continues to be.
It's really good.
But then he goes off and does completely. Well, not completely different things, because they also continue to work together. They sort of reconciled after their breakup, and like they continue to, you know, she wrote for him a lot. But.
Yeah, but the first couple of movies he makes, I mean, the iterations of his career are interesting because, you know, especially as a filmmaker, he makes Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and then he makes The Graduate a couple years later, and those movies are very different from each other, but they have a really like arresting visual style. They're very emotional. The camera is the look of the movie, of both movies, is very specific. The Graduate obviously evokes French New Wave filmmaking, so you think you have on your hands this guy who's going to spend his career doing jump cuts and crazy zooms and superimpositions, and he turns into someone whose visual style really isn't what makes him great or very good. It's more his relationship with good writing and good acting. And I think the thing that kind of makes him uncool if you're somebody who loves movies is that he isn't a visualist. He doesn't have a real, he doesn't appear to have a through line from movie to movie, although I think his great subject is masculinity and femininity, and sometimes the relationship of one thing to the other. Yeah. I think he's at a disadvantage because he works with movie stars. He isn't the sort of director he's not even Sidney Pollack in the sense that he hasn't made, his classic movies are way behind him. And at the height of his popularity as a movie director, he wasn't making great movies. You know, I watched Working Girl a couple weeks ago because it was on at the same time as a football game I didn't want to watch. And I watched the whole thing.
There's your masculinity and femininity.
Right.
Diametric opposites.
Fighting at odds with each other.
Picture in picture.
And I was really struck by how broad. All his movies are really broad, and I think that's the other knock against him. But there's a kind of entertainment in broadness when the person conducting it knows what he's doing. And Mike Nichols, I was struck watching Working Girl by how unafraid he was to like have all the actors be as big as they possibly could be. But he picks one person in each movie to not be as big as everybody else, so as to shine a spotlight on that person. And Melanie Griffith, obviously, in Working Girl is that person who is going small when everybody else, including the hair, is really big. Even Harrison Ford in that movie, it's the biggest I've ever seen him. Like, he's just going, he's loud, he's laughing the whole time, he is openly sexy. I always feel like Harrison Ford is embarrassed by himself.
Yeah.
And I think whenever he works with Mike Nichols, he's not.
Yeah, that's true. And he gets to be, he's the sex object. He's the chick.
There's a scene, I don't know if you remember this scene, there's a scene where he changes his shirt in his office. And he takes the shirt off, and the office is full of women. And all the women, you know, it's that classic, you know, executive like office situation where you have the slatted blinds, and his are open. And he takes his shirt off. He's on the phone when he's changing his shirt. And so Nichols fills the rear of the frame with all these women, and they're all like, I mean, because you're also at the same time, they don't really have to act because it's Harrison Ford taking his shirt off.
It's a special effect.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
And when he puts it on, he turns around and all the women start clapping. And he's like, he doesn't close the blind. He takes a bow, you know?
Yep.
And the thing that I love about Mike Nichols is that he loved stars. He loved stardom. He loved starriness. He loved giving really good people an opportunity to be good at what they do. Like, do I have political problems with the birdcage? Yeah, probably. But it's so fun. It's a really fun movie.
It's super entertaining. I mean, I feel the same way. I mean, I think Charlie Wilson's War is in a way like
Charlie Wilson's War doesn't work, but it works.
And that staginess that we're talking about, you know, in the like that's a sort of it's a recurrence of that. It's a recurrence of that, you know, thing. But then there's so many great performances in there, and it's just there's so many great things you know, again, Phil Hoffman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excuse me, what the fuck? And the slam, the whole thing. Like I don't get sick at sea. I mean, and that's Aaron Sorkin. Like, but it's also Mike.
But
Nichols,
it's Mike Nichols
knowing how to just put that stuff over better than a lot of people that put over Aaron Sorkin. You know,
letting Julia Roberts just do whatever Julia Roberts was doing with that character and that accent and everything. I mean, the hair. I also think that actors felt a real comfort working with him to take these kinds of risks. I don't know that Julia Roberts would have tried to play that part for anybody else. I think that his movies are full of like heart and they're not insincere. They're not deep at all. And I think that's another knock against him. I mean, he's not really saying anything. I mean, even with something with Angels, like Angels in America, which he made for HBO, that is a work that says everything for you. Like Nichols doesn't have to do anything.
Right, so it's harder to see like what the Mike Nichols-ness of it is because that's all Tony Kushner, and it's like it's phenomenal. But like you just have to not blow that. Like you just have to make sure the lens cap is off and point in the right direction.
But there's a part of me before we go that really wishes that. I mean, I wish he had made all the movies. You know, I wish he'd made all American movies. I think he and Sidney Pollack make a kind of movie that nobody will really ever make anymore. And it's the sort of movie that I think Pollack benefited from having mostly better scripts, but Mike Nichols weren't terrible. I mean, Heartburn, for instance, which Nora Ephron wrote, it's a really interesting movie that's also really funny and kind of sad in a lot of ways, but he treats it, I mean, his tone is very simple, and he's not like trying to overcomplicate these stories with a lot of, you know, filmmaking and camera angles. I mean, he loves close-ups. He loves actors who can do surprising things in a movie. And there's just a classiness to the way that he worked that very few other people would even know how to do now. You know, I mean, he was old school. He was 83, I think, or 88.
He was 83.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just don't see anybody else working at that level. I mean, maybe Anthony Minghella, who was also no longer with us. Yeah. I mean, he was a disciple of that type of filmmaking. And it's just sad. It's sad that he's gone. I mean, he wasn't really working he was probably involved in a lot more theater things than I knew.
Had he made anything since Closer? Was there anything? Was Wit after Closer? Maybe.
I think Charles Wilson's War was after Closer.
Was it?
I believe it was. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure.
But it was he was winding down.
Yeah.
I think there was not. He was whatever the urgency was to make movies was not there.
Yeah, but he loved women. There's another thing. He made great movies about women. He made really entertaining movies about women. Even when he didn't work, I mean, you were entertained by it's not working, and there just won't be anybody else like that. We have to go.
Yes, that we do. Thanks, Mike Nichols, for everything.
Thanks, Alex, for hanging out with me.
It's two shows in 1 week.
I know, it's amazing.
It is. We're crushing it.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. By the way,
which is now when you hear this, or when you hear it or see it, it will be almost Thanksgiving. So enjoy that. Thank you to Joe Fuentes, our excellent producer.
And Dave Jacoby, our other excellent producer. And thanks for you guys for watching and listening. I'll see you in a week.